Lesson 2, the American Revolution. How do we get to the American Revolution? Well, first of all, there was the French and Indian War, 1754 to 1763. French and the British were fighting over Canada, parts of Canada. The British win, but with that win, they also won some debt, or a great amount of debt. And King George, the tyrant King George as he became to be known, is broke. So what does he do? This is where the major steps coming to the leading to the revolution start coming about. Well, first of all, British Parliament, which is the government, imposed new taxes on the colonies to help pay off the war debt. And this is where they come up with the idea or the concept of what they call the Intolerable Acts. System of taxes and laws passed to pay off the debt accrued by the French and Indian War and also keep the colonists, the Americans, in check. Of course, the first one that they started off with was the Stamp Act of 1765. It required the colonial newspapers, books, and documents to carry an official government stamp. Of course, colonists object to that stamp, and they felt that as Englishmen, they had not been represented in Parliament, that they should have some sort of say when they have these things taxed on them or put upon them. So this is where the idea, or it leads to the idea of no taxation without representation. In other words, we should be, if we're going to get taxed, we should at least have someone represent us there so we have some sort of say in whether we feel it's right or not to get taxed for that. Why should we have to suffer and pay for this war? They didn't believe that they had to pay something for. That was Britain's thing. They're over here, making money and, having to survive without the burden of having to pay for King George's debt. So they repeal the Stamp Act, but after they repeal the Stamp Act, they put a tax on paper, glass, and tea. And they do, the English King George sends more troops to keep the colonists in check, and they come up with the Quartering Act. No, they didn't have to pay for anything by quarters. Quartering Act is the colonists had to provide quarters, where it's a place to live and feed the English soldiers. And then, of course, the English colonists were not too happy about that. And of course, the famous Boston Tea Party happens in 1773. In the Boston Tea Party, colonists dressed up as Indians, the story says, they dump tea into the Boston Harbor. They dump all that tea, King George finds out about it, gets upset. He shuts down Boston Harbor, or at least commerce in Boston Harbor, until that the tea lost, or the amount of tea lost, or whatever it's worth, gets paid back or paid for by the colonists. So then 1775 comes around, and there's all this tension already going on between the colonists and the English, and the British soldiers exchange gunfire with colonial volunteers at Lexington and Concord, and marks the start of the revolution. So almost a year later, they're already crying for independence, but Congress decides to seek for independence and make a stand. Now the big question is, who should we get to write this document of grievances? You're probably going, what's a grievance, sir? Well, grievances are complaints. I like it to say when you get old enough, you get your own apartment, your own place, you live under your landlord, and certain things don't work, and you want them fixed. It's a grievance. Like, look, my AC is broken. You're not fixing it. I'm complaining. Can you fix it? Well, they go ahead and decide to go ahead and get Thomas Jefferson to write the Declaration of Independence. And the Declaration of Independence gets formally adopted and by the Continental Congress on July 4th, 1776. That is the day, of course, of the Declaration of Independence, which we all know about. It starts the independence of the colonies. And in that paper comes up with the idea or term of unalienable rights. These are basic rights to you that cannot be taken away. Okay? Not even King George, maybe your parents until you're 18, but pretty much the idea of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. No one can take those unalienable rights away from you to be a human being. And that was the big term or the big idea of the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration, of course, lists the grievances against King George, and it also names in that same Continental Congress, it leads to the naming of the General of the Continental Army, which of course is George Washington. Good luck. You should have enough information to pass your quiz. Okay. Goodbye and good luck.
Created using Powtoon.